You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
And we are back. Hello. Thank you to everyone for staying tuned. And I have to say, didn't even know Steven had that camera set up for the break, but that was one of the coolest edits I think I've seen in the show. That was really cool. It was a slick way to kind of keep everyone posted on what's happening here. So we got some new guests. Obviously, this is not Kevin and not Luca, not Julie. We wanted to take this opportunity. We have obviously a lot of really good partners around the city, and Dave and I have both worked with Natalie and Michele, and we wanted to bring them in. They're real estate lawyers, and I will pass it off to you guys to maybe introduce yourself, and then we'll just start hitting you with those really hard-hitting questions that we planned and didn't tell you about. Yeah, take the floor, Natalie. Maybe tell us just about the firm and both of your backgrounds in real estate law.
So hi, we're Guertin Poirier Lawyers. I'm Natalie Guertin. This is Michele Poirier, my partner. And we focus primarily on real estate law. We also do a bit of wills and estate work. We're actually a fourth generation law firm in Ottawa. So my great-grandfather, grandfather, and father were all real estate lawyers in Ottawa. So it's kind of in my blood. I had no choice, but I'm also the first woman, which I'm really proud of. So I'm in my 12th year of practice, and we're sort of carrying on the Guertin family's client care model. We focus really a lot on communication, collaboration, and care. So that's what the clients feel when they work with our office. They're not just a file number for us. They're a client. We look at it as a huge major life event, and we're really there for them to support them, answer all of their questions, educate them, to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible, because it is extremely stressful. You're not just managing bank documents or mortgage applications. You're also managing kids that are moving, changing schools. You're packing up your whole house, your whole life. So it's a huge event, and we want to be there for them to sort of really support them and make sure everything is as smooth as possible.
Yeah, I like actually the wording you used, because we almost in the industry, like all of us, we do it every day. So it seems like, I don't want to say redundant, like every file is completely different and every person's goals are different, but it does become like, we're submitting the same way, we're reviewing the application the same way, but it's really important to reflect on the fact that, like most of our clients, this is the biggest purchase they're ever going to make. It's a huge investment. It's a lot of stress on them as well that we're kind of taking on and helping kind of alleviate some of that. And that's actually one of the reasons I have really enjoyed working with both of you, is because of the fact that I know you are very, in a non-condescending way, like able to take their hand and walk them through the process, and like they feel welcomed and so on. You mentioned the fourth generation. It's funny, actually, originally when I met your dad, he was working in Orleans, Louis Guertin, and I was working at the TD Bank in Orleans. And the Guertins used to come in, the daughters used to come in to do all the deposits for the firm. And one of my friends, Steven, actually met your sister from bringing in the deposits, and now they are married, have a family, and so on. So it's a really, it's a very funny.
Full of crap.
And Michele, you're originally from the East Coast, right? And
New Brunswick.
From New Brunswick. Dave, little UNB there, different university, and then you moved to Ottawa about 8 years ago, and you maybe tell us a bit about your background as well, like how you kind of got into everything.
Yeah, so I moved to Ottawa from New Brunswick. Well, actually, I worked in Halifax for a few years before moving here in 2016. I followed my husband, who was doing a fellowship at the Civic Hospital, and I just happened to meet Natalie across the table like this. We were just sitting at some friend's house, and we were chatting, and she was asking me, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I'm a litigation lawyer in Halifax, but I'm here just for a few years, maybe 1 or 2 years. So I'm looking to maybe hopefully replace a real estate lawyer who might go on the mat leave, because that's a really short term, like it's quick transactions and a short term contract. And she was like, who's setting us up here? Because I'm pregnant.
Where's Ashley here?
So I didn't know at the time, but she was a real estate lawyer, pregnant, looking to go on a mat leave. So that's how I got into the family business. So they kind of adopted me from there. Yeah. And then we bounced between mat leaves back and forth until 2020, when I finally came back from having my last kid. And her father was like, I'm out. You're done having babies. I am out.
I'm not doing any of it.
Yeah.
No, the pandemic was hard on Louis Guertin. I think with all the changes, like everything going more virtual and everything electronically. He was electronically challenged. So we took over from there.
So we're just finishing up our second year of business together.
And you guys are located in Beechwood, right? So just east of downtown?
Exactly. Yeah.
You must have seen a lot over the last, you've kind of taken over. You would have heard a lot of stories from your dad and from family as well. But, running the show on your own for the last couple of years, what have you, obviously coming from litigation backgrounds, a little bit different as well, but, and even you from hearing about real estate and being in the family, but what have you found has been different and where you didn't expect from, like, just overall, good, bad, the ugly, from running your own shop the last 2 years?
I worked for my dad for more than 10 years, so I had a really good idea of how to run the business already. I would say that we did a lot of positive changes to the business. We introduced a lot of online banking that he wasn't doing. He was going to the bank every day and chatting with the bank representatives. We don't do that anymore. So a lot of it's a lot more effective now. Sometimes I have my deals closed at 9:30 in the morning because I'm wiring out funds. We're electronically releasing transfers, so it's going a lot quicker than it used to. So I think we've made it we've modernized the practice a lot since he retired. Yeah.
With the business allows us to provide more options to our clients. Now that we are allowed to do virtual commissioning as well. So that was a positive impact of the pandemic.
So most of our listeners at least that I know of, we have a lot of mortgage agents, realtors, and kind of investors and stuff in real estate that listen. So for yourselves, for anyone who doesn't know, what would be a typical kind of, I'm a new first-time home buyer, my realtor just referred me to you, what's your kind of process, and how do you, like you said, you kind of help clients through the process. So at a high level, what are your kind of steps what are the steps for closing as a real estate lawyer on that side of the transaction? Because we talk ad nauseum about the real estate purchasing, the financing, but on your end, what does that look like, kind of start to finish?
So we kind of come in and more at the end. You already have a firm agreement. You hopefully have a pre-approval. You're ready to go. So first thing we do is we open your file on the same day that we receive your agreement. We will either call you or send you a welcome email, which it's a very lengthy email that explains to you everything that you need to expect. You need to get your insurance in order. You need to contact your utilities. We even tell you when your appointment is with us. Even if it's in 3 months, it's in your calendar, it's in our calendar. Everyone knows when you're meeting with your lawyer. And I think that really helps from the get-go set up a trust relationship
and
with your client.
Yeah.
A timeline. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just like a black hole, and clients are I don't even know where, when I'm meeting with my lawyer. I'm 2 days before my closing date. I don't know where to bring my bank draft. I don't know what to do.
Well, people still think they're giving us the money. When do I bring you 20 grand, Paul? I'm no, you're not giving me anything.
I always joke. I'm here for donations, but you don't have to. I'm not.
It's not including your down payment.
Yeah, the clients know it's never a big surprise. When we reach the appointment, the client knows exactly what's going on. They've already pre-reviewed their documents by email, so nothing is a surprise. You don't need any more surprises 2 days before closing. So I think from the beginning, we build that relationship with the client. That way, on the closing date, they're a lot less stressed out. Yeah. They know what's going on. They can call us or email us. We're very responsive, so they know if they're worried about anything, we'll be there to answer their questions.
And what's kind of the obviously, we let on the brokering side, we let clients know that a lawyer's been instructed, which is kind of the directions from the bank to the lawyer of who's financing it, what conditions are there on your side. Maybe you can kind of give people an understanding of kind of what those lender instructions look like things that you're having to do on your side ahead of time before they even come in to sign or anything like that, or things that you have to that you look for to kind of protect them on a transaction.
Yeah, so the mortgage instructions will give us the exact details of how the mortgage should be registered on title under a document called a charge. So we put not a lien, but a charge on property, and that gives us the amount of the mortgage, the interest rate, the terms, etc. And it also provides us with a list of all outstanding documents that the clients have to provide, such as fire insurance. Sometimes it's a void check to set up their mortgage payment. Sometimes we have a list of personal debts that we have to pay before we register the transaction, just to balance the credits. And that all goes, so those mortgage instructions, they all go to our wonderful legal assistant, who will start working on the file as soon as she receives the instructions. And then usually about 4 or 5 days before the closing day, the file is complete. We submit all the documents for review to our clients to kind of give them a quick overview of what to expect. And then we meet with them about 2 days, like 2 business days before their closing date. So it's a pretty straightforward process that usually involves a lot of communications between us, the clients, mortgage brokers, real estate agents. We don't like talking to real estate agents all that much, simply because usually when they get involved...
No offense, guys. No offense. No offense.
No, I'm kidding. So we love dealing with
them. Just don't like talking to them ever. Just
but usually... No, simply because usually when real estate agents and lawyers have to talk, it's because there's an issue with the property. And that involves usually a lot of work and a lot of stress for our clients. But with great partners,
that's a great. What's the craziest thing that you guys have seen on a closing come up?
Curveballs.
That's a heavy loaded question, but we see.
It's hard to.
Give us a few then. It sounds like you got a lot of ammo. So.
Yeah. I have a story actually involving a broker. I wasn't sure I wanted to say this because I don't want to insult brokers.
Yeah,
it's not.
No one in this room.
I think we were like the day before closing, and there were a lot of outstanding broker conditions. So all of our solicitor conditions were satisfied, but there were a lot of broker conditions. And I was reaching out to the broker several times, and at the end of the day, it was clear that he had just dropped the client the day before closing. I don't know if there was a lack of trust, communication between him and the client, but he just dropped the file. So our legal assistant, as Michele mentioned, she's amazing. She took on that role. She became the broker. She got the client in. She's like, okay, we're going to pay down your debts. We're going to pay your car loan. We're going to pay this. We're going to submit all of these documents to the lender. So she got all of those broker conditions satisfied on top of the solicitor conditions. We got the deal funded, and the client got her keys before 5. And this was
because on your instructions, similar to us on the brokering side, we can see what the solicitor conditions are, and you can see what the broker conditions are. So I guess she just saw what the broker conditions were, and we're like, you know what? So
it was like, what's outstanding?
Yeah.
What can we do? We got the list,
Interesting.
and we got everything.
To accommodate that. Because I know some of them would probably say, like, no, we have to deal with the broker. Kind of.
It really takes a team
Yeah.
to close a file.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was less funny. But like in terms of the funny things that we've had happening on transactions, I think the most common one is clients are buying without inspection. And then the day of closing or the day after closing, they call us to say, hey, what do I do with the raccoon in the attic? Or like, what do I do with I don't have a septic system.
Now in the basement.
Yeah, so those kind of surprises, which unfortunately we can't do much at that point in time, but we will be there for the clients. We will negotiate for a solution or resolution of the issue. If it's prior to closing, then we have better chances at negotiating. If it's after closing, we'll try our best, but we always usually advise our clients to get an inspection, such as, and financing conditions as well.
It's crazy in 2020, early, like during the pandemic, when people were just buying like no inspections, no conditions, like 100,000 were asking. It's like, hold on to your seats. Yeah.
When they come to us at that point, they already signed it. The contract is firm, so it's like, oh, well, good luck with that. Sign here.
Talk to somebody, right? No, I didn't talk to anybody. We're good. No, you're not. You're not good.
Purchase and sale coming in with financing conditions, conditions for inspections and such.
And typically, typically you're working as well. Like you're kind of as we are, like you're kind of the middleman between the lender and the client, right? Like you're getting instructions from the lender, but you're also kind of looking out for everyone's best interest.
Because we
How do
also
you?
represent the lender.
That's it. So how do you balance that so that you're actually still looking out for your client's best interest, but still protecting the lender? Like, how do you work that balance?
Collaboration, open communication, honesty, integrity.
Yeah.
Honestly, like just
Yeah.
keep that communication open, because there's always a solution. Sometimes it's creative, but there's always a solution if you just keep everyone involved, like, up to date with everything that's going on. And that's also how you build your trust relationship. And people are more willing to negotiate on good faith if they know what's going on and if they know that you're really on top of it and it's not a last minute surprise. Yeah.
Now for the this is not directed at these guys in the room. What do you find on purchase agreements that are included that cause them, like, condition? Are there any conditions that you find cause the most headaches on purchase agreements, like just overall on an entire deal?
I think it's mostly the lack of condition
Lack
that
of
will cause an
conditions.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have to sell a property before buying your next one, your purchase agreement should have a condition about the sale of your house. Like, it should be.
If you don't qualify to hold both.
Exactly.
You can't
So-
carry both. Yeah.
So I agree. It would be mainly the lack of condition, and sometimes that's just a reflection of the market. It's just because you're in a bidding war, you have to take it or leave it without condition. And we understand that that was the circumstances back in 2020, 2021. But we're happy to see new agreements with conditions coming
Well,
back.
so do we. We're
Yeah.
very happy to see
For sure.
conditions. We,
Pro conditions.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Firm agreement of purchase and sale with no financing
They'll just send us an
option.
APS and be like, hey, I bought a house. It's like,
We haven't.
did you? Okay.
We not even talked to them. We haven't seen income yet. In some cases, they or we've seen income and we're good, and we say, yeah, your max purchase price $500,000. We get a purchase agreement for $575,000, no condition, but also it's triggering an appraisal. It's also triggering an appraisal, so there's no guarantee that the value and purchase price are aligning, and that they don't have any additional savings to cover any delta if it doesn't actually appraise. So yeah, there's a lot of files that are like very sleepless nights that people didn't realize. Like,
It's for us too.
oh no, we like, I know Paul and I on our side, like we end up bearing the stress through them because
Absolutely.
and it's not to the complete fault of the client. Like, they're a little just unaware of like the impact when you're told a certain amount. Like, that's actually what the limit is. There's not really flexibility. Unless you can come up with the money to cover that difference. So we end up having to find a solution, which then you're hearing from them like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, what I meant is 500 was the limit, not 575.
Yeah.
There's not really like, no variable.
Yeah, people always try to push the envelope. I actually had a client recently that was pre-approved for 700, and he's like, "That's way too much. We're aiming for 5." I was like, "Thank you. Like, that's awesome. You're a very conscious buyer." Greg had a question. He says, "Have Natalie and Michele noticed an increase in divorce cases, especially when it comes to real estate sales over the past few years?"
Absolutely. Pandemic divorces,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So it's a lot of couples selling their house. They're each buying another house. We see a lot of that for sure.
I have to plug it because I know Dave and I, like years ago, we had a partnership with the CCLA with regards to the separation and divorce program, because there's so many lawyers that practice family law that do not know that during a separation or divorce, you can refinance up to 95% of the value. So anyone who's listening, if you know someone who is currently going through a separation or divorce and they currently own a home, this can save countless people from having to like uproot their families, leave their house. Both people are like, you're selling, nobody's winning, everybody's losing, you're losing equity, you're paying fees and so on. So there is a program specific that Dave and I have access to where you can actually refinance the current property up to 95%, which then gives you that additional 15% equity, because typically it's only 80%, right, on a refi. To come up with a buyout. Yeah, you can pay them cash and they can buy their own place or have a down payment, pay off some debt. So it's an amazing program. And it just made me think of that with Greg. But Dave and I had this program probably 8 or 9 years ago, and we talked to countless family law firms, and the majority of them had not heard of it. Now, I think it's more like relevant now. I think people are aware of it now. But back then there was so much like miseducation, or just people didn't even know of it, like ignorance around the program. And so many people could have had like not only money saved, but houses saved, easier on the kids, everything. It's so much better.
Keeping children in their family home. They grew up, absolutely.
I mean, to that point, married, common law, even if you're just like friends owning a property together, it can technically fall under it as long as there's a contractual agreement that you're needing to like make the other one whole, pay out, whatever debt or buy them out. So if it's in a contractual document that's been notarized, you're good, whether it's a separation agreement or otherwise. So little plug to Paul's point, little PSA.
I have a question for you too. So in our business, people always ask us about like, what's mortgage insurance? What's title insurance? What's this insurance? What's CMHC? What's, so can you explain, you handle a lot of title insurance, obviously on your end. That's kind of what you're, one of the main things you're obviously kind of incorporating into the transaction. Can you explain at a high level, like what is title insurance and why is it important for home buyers?
So it's very important. And it was introduced in the early 90s. So it protects a whole range of issues. The biggest one is fraud, title fraud. There's also it covers zoning issues, unpaid bills by the vendor. It's also most of the time or all the time required by the lender. So it's not really an option. I've never, ever closed a deal in 12 years without title insurance. Technically I could. I would have a whole list of items that I would need to check off, a whole list of searches that I would need to do, zoning certificate, tax certificate, brand new survey. This would end up costing the client probably $10,000 rather than a $500 policy. So and at the end of the day, you don't have any protection. So it's a no-brainer.
So other than fraud, like fraud's a big one that they cover.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people most people know it, and especially for the lender, but it does cover things like you were saying about survey. Like even if your neighbor, you bought a house and the neighbors put a fence on your portion of the lawn, it can even kind of cover that sort of like that.
It'll cover your losses.
Yeah.
So it won't give you ownership to that parcel, but it will cover the loss of removing the fence, removing the shed.
There's a lot of things that it covers that people aren't aware of.
It covers issues that were existing at the time that you obtained the policy. So if you buy a title insurance and then a few weeks later you go and put up a shed on your neighbor's property, sure, you're never that was on you. Yeah. But no, you're right. So it does cover a lot of those title issues.
Yeah, they kind of. There was I've gone to a number of FCT title fraud kind of conferences and speeches, and a lot of them that they talk about title fraud, and the big one is. On people that have even especially free and clear properties to at least register a secured line of credit for $1, just because of when they are free and clear, fraud kind of comes into play, or there's a lot of like kind of craziness. Ottawa doesn't have the number of fraud cases that Toronto and Vancouver does.
Something's got to go there. It's either going to be fraud or a line of credit.
It's it's really interesting. I always found kind of the cases around, or the case studies around like when there was fraud of like just pretending to be a buyer or a parent, or and that's why powers of attorney, a lot of banks won't allow POAs anymore. And I know I get clients all the time where they're especially government like families where a spouse is overseas and they're just like, oh, I have a power of attorney, we're good. Like, no, you're not good. Like banks have gone away from allowing powers of attorney because of that. People being gone and a spouse just being like, well, I'm done with this relationship and I'm just going to sign for the house and I'm going to uproot and go. And
thankfully, we're now allowed virtual commissioning. So the Law Society has introduced that since the pandemic. So we're able to meet a client who's overseas on a work trip, for example, and we can virtually witness all of their documents. So that was really helpful as well. Yeah.
We're getting also new means of verifying IDs, like some electronic apps that actually you can send like a picture of your driver's license to that app and it verifies all the data and the information. So it's all in an effort to reduce identity theft and
this company we used to work with, they do like and all this, they're like computer scientists and they're called Gambit, but they had this contract where they were doing like facial recognition and ID recognition, stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually developed that, but yeah.
So there's a lot of efforts against fraud and identity theft, which was more common during the pandemic, especially in Toronto. I think we all got to read those news articles that were very scary. Oh yeah, and And I think also I've been noticing lately that most lenders, they will register at a much higher value. So they will basically put their mortgage on the whole appraised value of the home. Maybe that's also in a way to kind of prevent a second mortgage from being registered on title fraudulently. Yeah.
There's a couple. So there's a couple ways or a couple reasons that I like. So I do private lending, and then also on the conventional side. So you could look. It can either be done to where you're notified if somebody tries putting a second on as the lender. So especially in the private world, that somebody's trying to sneak a second in behind you, you're aware because but for the TDs and a number of the banks of the world, they'll go up to 125% to reuse that charge, right, to kind of reduce the legal fees because they can just run it in house as opposed to
a lot of other big lenders, we're seeing it more and more. And I wonder if it's about also fraud protection, because if you have a mortgage secured on the whole value of the home, then it's hard for someone to steal equity from that property. And it's also an incentive for our clients to borrow more funds from that lender, but that's been pretty standard.
Yeah, that's really, no, I didn't realize that TD was one of the only ones that were doing it. So you're seeing an uptick from the other banks? Yeah.
And now everyone's doing it.
So what would you say for, this is completely aside, not title related. I think the big thing that people that have bought houses before kind of know what to expect. What do you say for first-time home buyers of what to expect throughout a transaction from the first time that you talk to them, whether it be they're buying a condo? We were talking earlier about that first home that somebody buys. It's not always the white picket fence, forever home. And a lot of times it is that starter home. So going through the conditional process, getting reviewing a condo status certificate, are the things that you guys, that the two of you would advise clients of during at least that initial process of reviewing that condo status certificate, and then through that whole process of like what they should be aware of, what they should kind of keep in mind as they're buying their first place? Is there anything different that you kind of do with them versus as opposed to?
So it all depends also on the agent who referred us to clients. Most of our clients will come to us very prepared. Like they have good expectations. They know what they're getting into, and they've visited the place already with their agent. So we're going to review the status certificate in writing by email. Then we'll call to see if they have any questions or concerns, anything to clarify. But usually status certificates are pretty black and white. This looks like a standard property, or your lender won't like that. Just back away right now. So if it's a no, it's usually from the lender's side. It's not really their decision anymore. It's like you can still sign and proceed with this transaction, but you will likely lose your lender, and then you're stuck buying cash. Aside from that, we're getting clients through the door who are well prepared with good expectations. And then we have a fantastic team at the office. Our office administrator, she's super proactive at calling the clients, telling them exactly what to expect in terms of moving in. Like, don't schedule your move-in truck on the day of your closing. You're going to be meeting with your lawyer a few days before, but you don't get your keys there. You get your keys on the closing days. These are all type of things that we don't have to say out loud to an experienced buyer, but first-time home buyers, it's like, oh, I'm meeting with the lawyer 3 days ahead. Does that mean I get the keys 3 days ahead? So we have to say a few we have to give a few words of advice that would be obvious to
I find the condo status review kind of an interesting one, because there's a reliance on the lawyer to kind of review, but it's not you kind of have to walk that fine line, I think, maybe, of whether to tell them, no, don't proceed with this, or you can proceed, but this is the warnings, like the lawsuits, like known asbestos or a shortfall of the reserve fund. These are all things you're obviously looking at, but you're, kind of, but there's
also a lawyer
much
time.
Yeah. But there's certain things but you're not able to, I don't know. Are you able to say don't go forward with this because of this, or is it just this is the advice?
The way that the condition is worded, it's a lawyer condition.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, yes, it is our call, but I wouldn't make that call for the client.
Yeah.
To me, I'm just there to advise. It's always a client's decision. If I do see a red flag with asbestos or a big shortfall, or and I can see that there's going to be a lender issue, for sure, I always recommend them to submit it to their lender first before removing that condition, because we have experienced really difficult files where the file unfortunately had to fall through because at the end of the day, the lender didn't approve of it. They hadn't reviewed it first. But to me, it's always the client's decision, for sure. I'm just there to present them with the risks and let them make the best decision for them.
I think on the condo status side is a lot of people just think, oh, I'm okay with that. And to your point, the lender's not. And even the lender might be okay with it, but there's only 3 insurers, like CMHC, Canada Guarantee, and Sagen. And if they all share information. So if it's a condo building and there's a few hundred.
Yeah, once it gets flagged.
But they share those status certificates. So if there's a number of buildings and they see that there's red flags on it, they share that information. And so you only have 3 opportunities to get an approval if you're less than 20% down, and you don't have many other options. So
it's really
kind of going against it.
It's really
yeah.
If CMHC doesn't approve you, then good luck with the other mortgage insurers. And we've had a deal fall through just in the past few months because of a status certificate issue that was revealed to the lender. The lender walked away. Unfortunately for this client, she never put a condition in her agreement for a review of status certificate. It wasn't the agent's fault. She just, her lawyer, her own brother was a lawyer, not a real estate lawyer, but he reviewed the status with her and was like, yeah, all good, all clear here. You can go ahead. This is a great deal. But it fell through, so we learned.
But at least tell them it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it was unfortunate, but we learned from those experiences. And in the past, it's usually pretty black or white. Like, it's really like your lender's not going to like this. You're walking on thin ice. If you're going to proceed with this transaction, submit it to your lender ahead of time. If it's a minor issue or it's kind of a gray area, sometimes I'll write a comfort letter to my lender before removing the condition. I'll say, there's a small issue with the property. We don't think it affects the marketability. So we would advise to proceed, but please confirm that you agree with that risk before we remove the condition. Rarely we've had to do that, but that's a way that we can alleviate the risk.
I would imagine, especially for like pending lawsuits, especially. It's like this is an insurance issue probably or whatever. There's not like a liability on the.
Especially
being able to write letters, fantastic.
Slip and fall incident. It has nothing to do with the shell of the condominium or the property itself. It's just someone fell.
You guys have closings today and you have to go, so we're trying not to keep you too long. Where can people find you? Like, obviously your physical location, but like where can they find you online to kind of do some more research on you and learn more about the firm?
So our website is guertinpoirierlaw.ca. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can call us anytime, send us an email. We're, as I said, really responsive. We always respond same day on the business day.
Yeah.
So,
except the realtors.
no.
Yeah.
Can barely type.
Yeah, Louis is our new social media man.
He retired and just became a guru.
That's how I type down. Yeah. There's zero chance he sees this, hears it. That's great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out. I know obviously you're very busy and we're getting close to the holidays and everyone's trying to close before the holidays. So we really appreciate you both coming out and kind of sharing your intel. We'll have you back on next year when you have a bit more time and we're not as rushed, and I'm sure Greg will blast you with some hard-hitting questions.
No.
Oh yeah.
Thanks a lot.
We're going to take a 2-second break just to see them out, and then we'll be right back. We're going to bring Luca and Kevin back in. So we'll be right back. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe because we'd really like that.